Hey everyone, welcome in. It is New Year's Day 2023.
2023.
It is the
incredible.
future. Each year it is more and more the future.
You know, I have a friend who literally runs into the new year every year. I always thought that was cool.
Really?
Yeah. Well, you're a runner too,
like
so you might.
I am, yeah.
I might.
Oh, he like actually is running
He
at
like
midnight?
Yeah. He tells his wife, he's like,
Yeah.
I'm going, and then he like runs out the door, and like he's a long distance runner, so
Yeah,
he
he
runs
just
and he
runs.
runs into the new year, which I
Oh, I like it.
yeah.
Do you have to go a certain direction to run into the new year? Is it coming?
I don't know. I guess
Is it
I
coming
wouldn't.
east to west, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
it would
makes
be,
sense.
right?
I don't know.
So you just run
This
east
just
and
goes
you'd
to
run
show
into
you
it.
how lateral my thinking is. I thought
Yeah.
north. I would just run north.
Whoa, definitely the sun does not
Maybe
rise
it's the
in the
maybe it's
north.
the true north kind of legacy
Yeah,
of this.
I like
you know,
that.
it's in
But
there.
I like that. Well, I hope you are running into the new year.
Running into the new year.
We ran into the new year last night.
Yeah.
Ran right into
Yeah,
it.
we did.
And we're excited that for many of you who showed up for communion as well, or are going to
Yes.
show up if you're watching this right before you come, coming for communion and our drop-in, like,
We are literally in two places at once. I'm
yeah.
sorry, it just
Think
blows my
about
mind
that.
how we can do that.
Are time traveling
Continue.
right
I'm
now.
sorry, Mark. My apologies.
But it's just important, right? I think the new year, when you look at January 1st, it's really a beautiful rhythm that we have as human beings, that we have a calendar and we have this natural beginning. That there's a time to look back at the year that has been, but there's also a time to look forward. And so we really just want to kind of give you some thoughts about that, about looking back
Yeah.
and about looking forward.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to remember, we're going to reflect a little bit, and then we're going to go into a time where we talk a little bit about where we're going next, renewal,
Yeah,
hopefully.
renewal. Yeah.
So a year ago, I don't know if, it's hard for me to wrap my head around this, but a
Yeah.
year ago, I hardly knew any of you.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I knew you a little
Yeah,
bit.
you weren't official yet a
No,
year ago.
a year
January.
ago
It
I
was
had
in
not
February.
officially started.
Yeah.
And as I've been reflecting and remembering the last year, I just think what a huge testament to the grace of God and like the goodness of this community and getting to know everybody. I mean, number one, I don't know if you heard, but I was sick this last week, and just the amount of love that poured in from people, text messages, people. I mean, even right now, somebody's delivering soup to our
Oh,
kids
that's
and wife are
amazing.
still down. So I just want to say thank you guys. You guys are lovely, and this is a community of love, like really meaningful.
And I like baked potato soup. If you're wondering,
I always forget that baked potatoes don't have gluten in them.
yeah, potatoes.
all
Potatoes,
that
no gluten.
So starch and gluten,
It's starch.
not
Yeah,
the same
starch
thing.
is different. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought as we're thinking about and remembering this last year, I thought it would be good to just sort of bullet point a few things that we have covered and that we've learned along the way. So of course we started out the year in the Gospel of Mark, so Mark's account of the life of Jesus, and we learned a ton in that. One of the things that I learned, and I'm really grateful and try to remember, is that following Jesus means that we get behind him. It means that we literally let him set the agenda, we let him define the terms, call the shots, even when those don't necessarily appear to our advantage or his advantage. We let him define things. And that's of course an ongoing pursuit, an ongoing challenge, and it's one that I want to remind us of as we move into the new year, because it's easy to marshal on. And then of course we just blasted into the Exodus series. I don't know if you remember.
I do.
That.
I remember it
Yeah.
well.
So we talked a lot about the Exodus, and especially that it's not just a static event in history, but it's our story.
Right.
The Exodus event is us being delivered as well. Not just God delivering Israel then, but delivering each and every one of us that's part of his church, his community. And another thing that we talked about was that God is very present with us in our suffering, as he was with Israel then. We talked about that God's not just content to save, but also he wants to sanctify. But part of that, I think, is that he doesn't love us because we're good. Right? He loves us, and in his love we become good. Sort of like Beauty and the Beast, right? Like,
I like that.
it's not that we're we're so lovable. It's that he just loves us, and we become lovable in his love.
I like
So that's a big one. And then we talked about in his love and in his transforming power, we're his royal property, his royal possession, treasured possessions. We belong to the King. And so a lot of life is about what it means to become his image bearers, to become those that are being made into his likeness. And that's a lot about what Exodus is. It's just learning to live with God and that he wants to dwell with us. And then I don't know if you remember this, Mark, but we got into the minor prophets. Do you recall this?
We did, and I didn't know. Full disclosure, I didn't know
That there were
much
12 of
going
them?
into. I think I knew that somewhere, and I knew the hits, right? I
Right.
knew all the verses.
Yep.
But I thought it was really helpful to get kind of the background, the context. And I actually thought the message of the minor prophets was so applicable to us today. Like it's so applicable to any nation, right? Who is trying to follow God. And often that call from God through the prophets was a call like for Israel to examine themselves.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Not, wail on their enemies.
Right.
It was to examine themselves, and I really appreciate that about the minor prophets.
Yeah, call to self-examine. That's
Yeah.
right. I think it's about, if I were to try to sum up the 12 or the minor prophets, I think it would have to do with we live life in a community, and that community means that there's no sort of privatization or individualization. There's no sort of like secret sins. Like everything that we do has positive or negative impacts on one another. I use the boat example of, from the Jewish sources where it's like there's a guy drilling under his seat and people are like, what are you doing? Because we're all in the boat together. And he's like, this is my seat. And they're like, yeah, but we're all in this. You're gonna, So, but some of us do that, right? Like we're just like cranking a hole into the right under our seat.
And you're like, hey, I'm on this boat too.
That's right. That's right. And that's where the minor prophets come in, and they're like, if you're wrong, I will tell you. It's tough love, it is a self-examine, which that leads us into the Advent, which is a time of examination. It's a time of reflection in the life of the church, in the kind of church calendar.
Yeah.
And so we thought it'd be a good exercise to reflect a little bit, and of course remembrance and reflection are deeply related. So.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that as you and I were talking, and I really love the words that you came up with, the remembrance, kind of remember, reflect, and renew. And I was thinking of reflection and how it's different than remembering, right? Like remembering is literally recalling maybe events of the past year. Hey, recalling what we studied on Sundays. Yeah. And you might be able to, and I think every January 1st, it's good to remember the year before. Remember major events that happened in your life and say, oh, wow, that happened this year. And you're remembering, and then reflection is that next step deeper, right? Reflection asks the deeper questions about those experiences.
So it's like an interpretive level.
Yeah, it is. And I think, and here's some reflection questions that you can use and that I use to look back at a year. One of them is just to ask myself about the experience. And so, and you can do it this way, right? This is kind of gets maybe more into the psychology. They always move to this. But you ask yourself, how did I feel during that event? Try to tap into your feelings.
Right.
Like I can remember that this event happened. Now that reflection is, how did I feel? And there's no right answer. Right? There's no right answer.
Right.
The answer might be, wow, for a long time I didn't feel anything. I felt numb. But now I can actually, as I reflect on it, I can feel. Okay. So maybe even this year, you might be feeling things that happened last year.
Right.
Because it takes a while.
A couple years back.
Or years
back.
So
can we case study this real quick?
I would love to.
Okay, so let's just say one of the great things that happened this year was that Marcy and I, we bought a home. And it's our first family home, and we're really excited. And if I think about how did I feel like during that, I was terrified
Yeah. Right.
and excited.
Right. Yeah.
But then I think one of the things that I haven't literally and figuratively unpacked is just like, okay, that's like our space now, and that
Yeah.
that kind of thinking through and feeling that relationship to that new
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it can help to,
I like it. Yeah, to have a specific
Yeah,
example
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure, because it's
or what was COVID like when I got COVID? I mean, let's not
yeah.
unpack that right,
Right.
now. It's a
Yeah.
little
Don't. It's too soon.
too soon.
Too
Yeah,
soon.
yeah.
But you will have to reflect on
Yes,
that.
I will.
Reflect on that
I will.
time.
I will.
You can also ask yourself, and I often ask myself, what can I learn from my past experiences? And that doesn't mean every experience in your life was put there to teach you something.
Right.
But we can learn something from every experience. And part of why I started with the feeling first is because I think you really have to reflect on that, and then you can learn from, wow, yeah, this event of buying a house was actually a mixture.
Yeah.
It wasn't just joy,
Right.
but there was fear of like, whoa, this is our space now.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
a mortgage, and
Yeah,
now we
pay
have all
for it,
these
yeah.
things. Yeah, we got to pay for it. And so ask yourself, what can I learn? And then also, I like to ask myself, hey, what might God be trying to teach me from this past year? What are
Right.
some lessons that God, and again, don't hear me wrong, that doesn't mean that God caused events in your lives to teach you lessons. But I think as we're walking through, and part of our spiritual formation and our journey is God is asking us, hey, what maybe it's God asking us, what did you learn from that experience? And often what we're asking is, what did we learn about ourselves?
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
so when you think of reflection, there's often this idea of self-reflection, and because I think it's easy maybe to reflect on other people's situations and to deduce what
Yeah.
they should learn from it.
Right. Right.
But it's much harder to self-reflect, and that's going to be really important when you remember the past year. Moving forward, we've got to move to a place of self-reflection. In fact, actually, Samuel T. Coleridge.
Come on.
The author, poet, he said this. He said, there is one art of which people should be masters, the art of reflection.
And that we don't reflect very often
Right.
as a people. Well, at least a lot of my
Yeah.
acquaintances, myself included. I sort of avoid some deeper reflection at times. Why do you think
Right.
that is, Mark? I'm just gonna
Yeah, no, I like that question. I think a lot of it is that
non-scripted
we
question. I'm just
have,
gonna throw your way.
I think that we have things that keep us busy, and for the most of us, even in simple ways, our needs are met daily, right? Like we can, if we're bored, we scroll our phone.
Right.
If we're hungry, we grab a bag of chips
Yeah.
off the top of the refrigerator.
Right.
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 Like, and so it's oftentimes, and that's why looking back on events that happened in the year, and especially looking back at hard events,
Yeah.
those might actually be the events that help us reflect.
That's interesting that you mentioned about scrolling the phone, because if I think
Yeah.
about like why don't I reflect more? Because I've been doing a little bit of reflection this last week because I had some time.
Yeah, you had some time on your hands.
as I was quarantined.
Yeah.
I was reading in the Desert Fathers, who of course early church,
Yeah.
the guys who took it upon themselves to live lives of solitude and reflection.
Yeah.
And they regularly talk about the biggest issue is distraction, and how driven we are to distraction. And like
Yeah.
this is like the 3rd, 4th century.
Right.
There's no
Right.
cell phones.
There is definitely no cell
And they're
phones.
like idle distractions.
Right.
Like what were they? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Just rocks and sand. Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, I think
yeah.
I think some of the distractions, and this could be helpful, some of the distractions was their own thoughts.
Yeah.
Right? Like St. Anthony, one of
Right.
the most famous desert fathers, when he went into the desert, he described it as a battle.
Yes.
Like it was a battle
Right.
the whole time.
Right.
It wasn't like I think for some of us now, when we think of spiritual formation and spiritual discipline, you're like, oh, I need some solitude or some quiet time.
Yeah, I need
away
peace,
from the
peace and quiet.
kids, away from the new
Hello.
puppies, please.
personal.
Away from work.
Yeah.
And actually, solitude is actually hard.
Yes.
I get self-reflection is
Because
hard.
it unearths like
Yeah.
all the, I don't want to say
And-
the garbage.
No.
Because
But yeah, it unearths all of our thoughts.
Yes.
Good, bad, and
Right,
indifferent.
right.
And those can be distracting.
Sure,
That's I hear
sure.
from so many people, myself included, and students and people in the church that I try to do a quiet time, but I'm
Yeah.
so distracted the whole
Yeah,
time. Even though
yeah.
they have their phone away, they have all these things, and it's their thoughts. Part of reflecting is allowing those thoughts
Yeah,
to come, right?
yeah, yeah.
Like allowing them to flow like a river,
Yeah.
and recognizing like, oh wow, man, I keep thinking about this event.
Right, right.
Or for some reason I keep thinking about this.
Mm.
Or I keep thinking I wish I could go on Instagram right now, right?
Sure.
And then it'd be like, oh, maybe I should watch how I'm using that in my life to distract
Yeah.
and so we really want, those are really good questions, and we want for you and for us for this year to really dive into the practice of reflection, and it's that deeper
Yep.
look at your life, and that takes time and intention.
Yeah.
It doesn't just automatically happen.
And encouragement.
Right.
Yep.
And one of the things that you might be hearing on social media, it's been, I think, very popular the last couple of years, but you might hear people talk about mindfulness. And I think that's what they mean by that, right?
Okay.
I think that what we mean by mindfulness is intentional reflection. You're asking yourself, man, why, when I'm bored, why do I always go to my phone?
Right.
Or when my coworker says this, why do I always get angry?
Yeah.
Even if they're
Yeah.
not meaning anything by it,
Yeah.
or why this, why that, and that's that, And so I would encourage you, and this kind of maybe moves us into
Yeah.
the next step of renewal, because
Right.
renewal is, what is something I'm going to do to be intentional about this next year
Yeah.
to change, to reflect, maybe
Yeah.
to have more. And I would encourage you, one of those things is to have a time of reflection every day. I mean, it can be literally as simple as 5-10 minutes.
Yep.
And I assure you, if you start there, like, you'll see a difference in your life, because it's just a time. And what might happen is you slow down, you remove distractions, and those conversations that you had with people might come back to
That's
you,
right.
and you think, oh, you think a couple things. You might think, wow, that was really good and life-giving.
Yeah.
Like, I need to have more of those conversations. And then there might also be ones where you're like, when I said that, I was actually just speaking out of a place of hurt.
Yeah.
And I should probably go talk to them and say, I'm sorry, or, right? But when you don't reflect, you just keep charging forward.
Yeah.
And you have to have those. So I would encourage you, moving into 2023, to have an intentional time of reflection every day. And so it's self-reflection, and then reflecting on, okay, God, I want to learn from you. What do you want to teach me? And that's been just something I've been having to come back to. Okay, God,
Yep.
what do you want to teach me? What
Yep.
do you want to teach me right now?
Amen. Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the things, as I've been doing that a bit more, it is a battle. It's a struggle to sort of carve out that time, and it's a worthy battle to do so.
Right.
I was thinking through. Sometimes people ask me like, "Oh, like what's your verse for the year?" or that kind of thing. And I don't really do verses for the year, but I was like,
Right.
well, like what? And I just reflected and prayed for a bit, and I really had on my heart this from John 14, where it talks about, Jesus says, I'm going to give you another helper, an advocate who will be with you always.
Yeah.
And I like what you're saying, because it reminds me that, even in our private thoughts and our reflections, the Spirit is with us.
Right.
And the Spirit wants
Right.
to help and guide us. He's
Yeah.
not sort of like out there somewhere. He's really
Right.
in our midst.
Right.
Which we, endless encouragement for me when I actually take that seriously and recall that. Yeah, and I mean, I've experienced plenty of times, like remembrance and reflection do lead to renewal. And our hope and our prayer for all of us this year is that as we spend time thinking about not just past events, but sort of interpreting them and praying through them and inviting the Spirit into that space, that He will be renewing. And renewal is really at the heart of kind of where we're going in the next series as well. So I just want to signpost a bit where we're going to be heading in the next couple of weeks. So between now and the beginning of Lent, which Lent begins February 22nd, Wednesday.
Yes.
Wednesday, always after Fat Tuesday or Shrove Tuesday, right?
Yep.
So I do hope we're going to be doing our little Wednesday, Fat Tuesday.
Well, we do our Wednesday, Ash Wednesday
service. That's right.
Tuesday we could have a pancake dinner. So
Ooh,
that's kind of a
hello.
classic thing, yeah.
Pancake dinner, Mark's house.
Pancake dinner, gluten-free pancakes, right here.
I mean,
hey,
sorry, I don't want to yuck
come
your.
on,
I'm going to reflect.
That's right. Reflect on that.
That was mean.
Reflect,
I yucked your yum. I am
yes.
apologizing.
You should
Sorry,
be.
Mark.
Now you are renewed.
Thank you. So as we get into that space, it's about 7 weeks, which is an auspicious, good number, right? 7.
Yeah.
We're going to be going through what it means to be in the body, life in the body, and we're going to be going especially through Romans 12 and I know. New Testament time.
Whoa.
Hold on to that seat, Mark.
Are you still going to sing in Hebrew, though, every once in a while?
Maybe I'll sing in Greek.
Oh.
It could happen. It could happen. Okay. Gotcha.
I like it.
So we're going to be going through 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12, and we're going to be talking about, especially next week, we're going to get into renewal itself. What does it mean to be transformed in our mind? And that great renewal passage from Romans 12, 1 and 2. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to move through that series about being in the body and life in the body, and then move into Lent, a period of massive reflection.
Right.
Right. And we've got some more hopes and dreams for the Lent season, don't we, Mark?
We do. Oh yeah, we do.
Always.
Yeah, we do. Always.
So yeah, stay tuned. We hope to see you guys January 8th, and it's lovely to see you all here for prayer, reflection, and communion. Much love, everybody.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.